Okay, good to see all of you. Welcome, Gloria, Toby, Paul, Henry, Susan, Mayor, Judd, and Andrew. I don't know if everyone's gotten to meet yet, because I know we meet virtually, but I know Paul and Mayor, they both moved in relatively recently. Paul, I think even a little bit more recently. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see each other either at shul, or maybe we'll have a halfway see them when we finish up this Perek. But everyone should just Zoom shiurim aren't the most conducive for people meeting each other socially, but I hope God willing we'll continue this in person after Purim, and definitely I hope everyone can get acquainted with each other, because I realize I know everyone at some point, but not all of you know each other, so it's we should figure something out. Okay, so we are on Vav Amud Aleph. We are on 6a. And remember, I told you at the beginning of the Masechta, we had all these technical Gemaras. I mean, all Gemaras are beautiful, but we're talking a lot about the dates and the 14th, the 15th. I mean, don't worry, we'll get back there soon. We're going to talk about Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni, which next week, I believe, which I'm really excited for because it talks about a leap year, which is what we're in Mamish right now. So we're going to get some good halacha l'maisa. But remember how I promised you that there'd be a lot of Agadata in Megillah. So we're not doing Agadata directly related to the story of Purim, but there's a lot of good stuff in here, even if it's not related directly to Purim. It's all timeless. So if we could orient ourselves, we are starting on the fourth wide line. I would imagine it's probably, I think it's the second page in Art Scroll, if I had to guess. If anyone has Amar Ze'ira. So right after we're done with all the Tveria discussion, we're up to Amar Ze'ira. We're going to talk about a new place. We're going to talk about Tzipori. So let me know, do you guys need any help locating it? My apologies. I think I fizzled out over there. Where did I get cut off? No?
No, a few times your voice was going like disappearing.
Okay, can you hear me now?
You sounded like you were underwater.
Good way to describe it.
So it's definitely the Wi-Fi then. Yeah, so my internet connection is unstable. All right. Are we here? No.
We're here.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, all right. Let's start this off then. So we are up to Amar Ze'ira. We're going to talk about a new place tonight. Amar Ze'ira. Kitron Zo Tzipori. So the place that's called in Sefer Shoftim, Kitron, we know as the city of Tzipori. Ulama Nikr Shema Tzipori. Why is it called Tzipori? What's the word Tzipori sound like? What would be the shoresh?
Bird.
Very good, guys. Very good, Henry and Phyllis. Shoyosheves Barosha Har Kitzipor, because geographically, topographically, it rests on the top of a mountain like a bird. Very good. So now here's the question. And by the way, I'm really excited, guys, because what we're about to do in the Gemara, we actually did in our Chumash year recently. Remember in our Chumash year, God willing, we're about to finish Parshas V'zos HaBracha, and Moshe was giving blessings to Shevet Dan, to Shevet Zvulun, and we looked at Rashi and some of the Mefarshim. So it's in reference to what we're about to see here in the Gemara, mainly about Zvulun we're going to focus in on. So this will sound a little familiar to the Chumash folks. Here we go. Ukitron Tzipori, can we really identify that the biblical city of Kitron is what we know as Tzipori? Kitron, as we know from the Psukim, was put in the portion of Zevulun. Zevulun lo horishes Yoshi Kitron Yoshi Nahalul. Zevulun neglected to kick out the original inhabitants of these two cities, of Kitron and Nahalul. So we see that it's within Zevulun's section of Eretz Yisrael. And so, number one, we know that Zevulun gets Kitron. However, is Kitron really Tzipori? Because we see Zevulun complains about having it. Uzvulun Misraim Amidosa Hava. But Zevulun, they complained to HaKadosh Baruch Hu about their lot in Eretz Yisrael. Shenamar, Zevulun amcharaf nafshu lamos. So the original translation, the basic one, is that they gave their lives over to fight in the battles. We actually use a similar formulation when we make a kel maleh for fallen soldiers. So we say they were mecharif nafsham, I think is the language, something similar, that they dedicated, they gave over their lives for the protection of the state. So that's what it means that Zvulun were heroes. They sacrificed themselves. But here, what it means is from a lashon of cherpa, of what's a good lashon of cherpa? A humiliation of sorts. So what? It's like a humiliation of sorts. So matam mishum did Naftali amarome saw them. Why were they upset? Because you look at the end of the pasuk, it says that Naphtali they had the higher, not just literally high, but they had the higher quality fields from Zevulun. So Zevulun's looking over their shoulder and they're looking at Naphtali and they're like, why does Naphtali get the better quality land and we're stuck with our place? Amar Zevulun HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam. Zevulun comes before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they register their complaint. To our brothers, you gave fields and vineyards. And for me, you gave all these hills and valleys. Certain parts of Eretz Yisrael, as you know, are very hilly. And that's like one of the reasons that I realize that California is like the same issue. You know, like you want to just like walk down the street to your neighbor, you have to put on your hiking gear sometimes, depending where in Israel you are. So I remember someone's telling me if you've ever been to Washington Heights, YU, there's like a huge hill. There's like a valley over there between both sides of the heights.
By Key Food, right by Key Food.
Yeah, by Key Food, exactly, Henry. So like Key Food. So someone told me one time.
No, well, I've been up that hill many.
It's traumatic. So yeah, I mean that hill's scary, especially when you're driving up that hill. You have to have one foot on the brake, one on the pedal when you brake there for the red light. But I remember one guy was someone was telling me he saw one guy was on the top of the hill, his girlfriend was on the bottom of the hill, and she's like, "I'm not walking up that hill." I'm like, you're getting into like a whole fight in public. So Zvulun said like, we don't want other couples to have to go through the same situation as those kids in the heights. So therefore, we are complaining. We want the flatlands. We don't want to have to, it's like, well, I guess in Stanford we have it to a certain degree. You know, when you go from Ravona all the way up to Shul on Shabbos, it's like I can't imagine living all the way down there. We say that you don't only get schar for being in Shul, but you get schar halicha. You get schar that's commensurate to the amount of effort you have to put to getting to Shul as well. So the folks in Ravona, no doubt, they get a lot of schar when they make it to Shul. Okay, now going forward, so why do we get the lesser quality land? You gave them good fields to grow food and to grow resources. For us, we have these rivers, we have water, which I don't know, I would think water is pretty good to be there, but apparently it's not as good. Amar lo, God responds to their complaint. What do you mean? What are you complaining about? Look at the resources I gave you. You have a monopoly on the Chila zone. The Chila zone, debate what exactly it is. We still haven't fully resolved it, but we think we have, is the Merculus trunculus, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is the water snail that we extract the blue dye for techelas. So Zevulun, the Chila zone only existed where Zevulun lived. And so they had a monopoly on this coveted resource. Every Jewish man who wanted to wear tzitzis, was wearing a four-cornered garment, he had to get hold of this dye. So they had pretty good resources. Shenemar. Now this sounds familiar, guys. This is from Vizos HaBracha. You can look at the side. It's Vizos HaBracha, Devarim Paraklama Gimel Pasuk Yud Tes. We did this very recently. Shenemar Amim Har Yikro. Nations will be called unto your mountain. Usbune Tumunechol, and they cover things that are hidden under the sand. What does this refer to? Tani Rav Yosef, Sufuni Zeh Azet chilazon. Sefune refers to the chilazon. Temune zo tris. So what is tris? Temune is referring to tris. Anyone know what that is? You look at Rashi. I would just very amused by this. I think you'll be amused as well. So look at Rashi. Taurus, dog shekorin tunina. If you have that goes to Tzionim, it says the Minchas Yitzchak translates it as tuna fish. So Zvulun had a monopoly because they're by the water. They had a monopoly on the tuna fish. I just got a kick out of that one. Okay. And then also, what was the final thing that they got? Chol, what does the sand refer to? This is a little bit more obvious. Zoschuchis levana. This refers to the white sand, the white glass, the high quality glass that they can make from it. Amar levana, Rivona Shalom, Mimo Diani. Okay, great. I have the Chila zone. I have tuna fish, but who's to say that the not border nations, the Shvatim that border me, won't, sneak into my territorial waters and take my natural resources? Amar lo, God responds, Sham yizbechu zivchei tzedek. There, they will sacrifice offerings of righteousness. What does that mean? Siman zeyelecha. This will be a siman for you. Anyone who takes from your natural resources without paying, they will not be successful in their business. Now, what does that have to do with bringing sacrifices? So you look at Rashi. Rashi says, just like if you steal money and you use that to bring a carbon ola, to bring really any carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, just as that's a mitzvah baba avera, your carbon will not be accepted by God. So too, if you steal from Zvulun, you'll not be successful in the business by stealing. So now, why do we bring this all in? Not just because we had too much halacha and we needed a break, but to make a point. If you're going to tell me that Zvulun has Kitron, we know Zvulun has Kitron. At Kitron, you're identifying as Tzipori, then on my Misraim Amidosa. Why was Zvulun complaining about their lot? Tzipori is a beautiful city. Why would Zvulun, if you really think Kitron is Tzipori, why is Zvulun complaining about having Tzipori? That's a pretty, that's high real estate over there. And you're going to say Tzipori doesn't have that much to it. Maybe it doesn't have the same blessings of flowing with milk and honey like other areas of Israel. What do you mean? Tzipori is 16 mil by 16 mil. So, sorry. Yes, 16 mil by 16 mil. So that, remember, like a mil is 2,000 amos, and 4 mil make a parsa. So just, you don't have to follow the measurements precisely for now, but it'll be slightly important. So Tzipori is a nice, spacious place that has good quality stuff. So why is Zvulun complaining about their lot? And if you would suggest that maybe Tzipori is high in quality, but in quantity, it's not so huge. It's a small area. What do you mean? That's bupkis. Here there's a little bit of math involved, but don't worry, it's not that confusing. It's not like the Yam Shel Shlomo Gemaras. If you ever learned Sukkah or Erevin, it talks about the calculation. We're not doing pi over here like some Gemaras do. This is more straightforward. So if you look at all the beautiful places in Eretz Yisrael that are considered to be flowing with milk and honey, it's like the amount from Mevei Kuvi to Sukobeni. Sorry, something came up on my computer. Let me exit out. Okay, good. And how much is that? Esrin utartin parsi urcha. That is 22 parsos in length. Upusia, and its width, shisa parsi. That's 6. So 22 by 6. Anyone want to do the how many square units is that? 130 something, I think.
132.
Thank you. 132, Henry. So do the math over here. You have 132. And how much did we say Tzipori was? We said Tzipori was Shisha Eser Mil. So that's 16 square units of parsos, I believe. So basically, after you crunch all the numbers, Tzipori comprises almost 1/8 of all of Eretz Yisrael that we consider to be the top tier real estate, flowing with milk and honey. And there's 12 tribes. So for Zvulun to have 1/8 of the best real estate, and there being 12 tribes, Zvulun is getting the better end of the deal compared to many of its neighbors. So why are they complaining if they have Tzipori? Afilahachi, says the Kramas Adifale. Nonetheless, as beautiful of a place as it was aesthetically, nothing beats having good old fields and vineyards and Dekanami. And you can actually see this in the pasuk. Dichsiv b'Naftali amarome sadesh mamina. As in Naphtali, they had the higher fields. They had fields that Zvulun could have only wished for. So that's why Zvulun was making their complaint. Okay, so we learned something about geography in Eretz Yisrael. Trivia question. Who's the author of Merome Sada? There's a sefer called Merome Sada. Anyone know? Did I just pause again, or no one knows? I think it paused again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Everyone's frozen though, but okay, you hear me. So it's fine in its sieve. So just so you know, it's all the good names from Psukim. They always come from names in the Torah. So I think Shir Hashirim might have like one of the strongest concentrations of names of Sfarim. So that's what I always keep my ear out for. Okay, let me pause. That's the end of that section dealing with Tzipori. Any questions? Okay. I mean, it's an agadita, not a lot of there wasn't any halach over there. Okay. Amar Rabbi Avahu. Now we're going to talk about another city. We're going to be talking about a city that is referenced in Tzefania. How many people have learned Tzefania? Yeah. Vikaron Te'aker. Vekron Te'aker. So the city of Ekron shall be uprooted. What is the city of Ekron? Zo Kisari Bas Edom Shiosheves Bein Hachulos. This is referring to Kisaria, which belonged to Edom, and the Edom refers to Rome. And this dwelled amongst the sand. As you know, Kisaria is on the beach. It's a very big tourist attraction. I'm sure some of you have been there. V'hi ha'isa yesed teku al Yisrael b'mei ha'yevanim, and it was a peg. It was like a peg in the side of the Jews, stuck in them, that they had to deal with during the times of the Yevanim. That's why it says it's tekua in them, it's stuck in them, and that's why it says in the pasuk that they uprooted that which was stuck in their side. Ushegaver malchus beis Chashmonai v'nitzchum hayikonosa achidas migdal shir. And when the Chashmonayim, right, from the story of Hanukkah, when they overpowered the Greeks who were there, so then they called it Achidas Migdal Shir, which Rashi says means the conquering of Migdal Shir. That's an interesting title. It's the Migdal Shir, the Tower of Song. So if you look actually in the Masuras Hashas, it gives two other understandings. What's it mean, a Tower of Song? Was this like a college for bards? So one is Migdal Tsur, so that makes more sense. It's like a hard rock. The other understanding was Migdal Shade, the Tower of Demons. They thought it was haunted by demons. So, okay, I don't know what to make of it. Three different understandings of why it was called, what it was called, but there you have it. Now, why do we bring up Ekron? So we have more to elaborate on. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rechanina, my desiv vasi rosi damav mipiv ushikotza mibein shinav. So I say that I will remove his blood from his mouth. I will remove his shkotzim, his detestable things, like shkotzim or matzim. I remove his shkotzim from between his teeth. V'nishar gam hu le'elokenu, and it will remain too for the Lord our God. V'asirosi dami piv, when it says in the pasuk, I'll remove the blood from between his teeth, zeh beis bamya shelehen. This refers to their pagan temple where they worship Bamya. Ushakutza mibein shinav zeh beis galia. When it says I'll remove the shkuts from between your teeth, that refers to another idol called Galia Shelahem. And then finally, v'nishar gam hu le'elokenu, and this too will remain for our God. Elu bate kinesios bate midrash sheba edom. This is what we did in the Mishnah class today. And this refers to the shuls and the bate midrashim that are found in Edom. What does that mean? By a kaluf behuda ve'ekron kiyavusi. So it says, and there'll be an aluf. Aluf is like in Asa, we talk about aluf this, aluf that, like a chieftain, someone who is above the rest in Judah. Vekron kiyavusi. And Ekron will become similar to Yavusi. This refers to Yerushalayim, which was occupied by the Yavusim beforehand. So just like we took over Yerushalayim and we turned it into the holiest of cities, Ekron also will turn into a holy city. What's this mean? Elu teratrios ukarkasios sheba Edom shasidin sar Yehuda lamim and Torah barabim. This refers to the different theaters, different gathering places of the Goyim in Edom that Rome had, that in the future the heads of the Jewish people will be teaching Torah publicly in those places. So I think I could be making this up, but I feel like this Gemara was being quoted when they had the Siyam Hashas.
You're swimming again.
What was that?
I said you were swimming again.
Does no one hear me?
Yeah, you're swimming even on the phone connection.
No, don't hear me? You guys
I
still
hear
there?
you.
Hello?
At least I'm here. I'm on by phone.
Oh, okay.
Now I hear you fine.
All right. It was a momentary. I guess my home office is too far away from the internet router. We need to figure out how to readjust the furniture here. Okay. All right. So, did you guys get that last part, or do I need to repeat? Where did I leave off? Okay, good. So
Repeat it.
like these the stadiums where they have the Siyam Hashas, so they say, these stadiums which are used for sports and for who knows what, now they're transformed into a place where we're teaching Torah publicly. It's like that OU City Field event. So in the end of days, it won't just be sports all year and then one day a year the OU City Field event, but it'll be 365 days a year. Yirtzeh Hashem in the future. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Rabbi, it's Paul. Why is this all here? I mean, are we trying to fit
That's
history?
what I was.
Are we
What
trying
does
to fit
it have to
history?
do with-
Welcome to the Gemara.
Well, it's a
Are
great.
we trying to fit history? Are we trying to fit history into the psukim from Thessalia, or is there some other? Or is this because of the walled cities and these are not walled cities? What?
Oh, very good, very good.
Context.
Excellent question. So it's important for us, the Gemara, as Henry said, this is the nature of the Gemara that goes on tangents. But it's good to remember why we're sharing what we're sharing, just to show that it's not a complete non sequitur. So you're correct. We were talking about walled cities. We then asked whether Tiberia has a status of a walled city due to the fact that it's partially protected by the water instead of a wall. Then we started talking about the identity of Tiberia, what it originally was in the Torah. We said perhaps Hamazo Tiberia. And then once we started talking about Tiberia, we then talked about other cities. We talked about Sipori just now, and now we're talking about the city of Ekron. So the Gemara is basically just taking this as an opportunity to share some important history and lessons behind the identity of different cities in Eretz Yisrael. So now it's no longer Hilchos Megillah. Now we went on a little bit of a tangent, but rest assured, this tangent will end on Vav and Base next week. But we're going to stay on the tangent for a little longer. But I hope it's an appealing tangent at least. Okay. Does that help? Anyone there?
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. I keep
I
getting
don't know who asked the question.
Oh, yeah.
It's Paul who asked the question. By the way, Rabbi, you're still fading in and out.
You know what? Let me, if you bear with me 1 second, let me try moving my laptop to where the internet's possibly better. You just give me, it'll take me 1 minute. Okay, so don't freak out. I'll be off for a second. I'll come right back.
Paul, I was asking exactly the same question. I sat here flipping back to the Mishnah to see if I could make the connection again.
Yeah. I mean, the only kesher I found was for the walled city discussion, but I didn't. It also seemed to me as if they were trying to put history in some of the psukim from Tefania, which weren't, inherently clear.
Very much not clear.
Okay, is this any better? Any better? Can you guys
So
hear?
far, yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds clear.
Great. All right, so hopefully this is closer to the internet in the dining room. So the challenge, I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses. The challenge logistically is that it's open concept here. So the shear takes place when Talia is being slowly put to sleep for the night. So I can't give shear out here, but now she's asleep. So now I can be out here. Okay. So going forward, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Remember, we're talking about places in Eretz Yisrael, and so now not only are we talking about places in Eretz Yisrael actually, but now we're talking specifically about places in Israel, particularly as it relates to Rome. Okay, so we're talking about. It's just important to understand that Chazal. So the same way that Yishmael was not Muslim because the Torah predates Islam, but many times they'll refer to, Chazal wouldn't be referring to Islam either, but when they refer to, Arabs in general, they'll talk about Yishmael. And when they talk about the Christians, about Rome, so they talk about Edom, talk about Asa. So just to understand why we're bringing that in. Here we go. All right, Yitzhak, Leshem zo Pamayas. So Leshem is what we call Pamayas today. The Ekron te'aker, and then Ekron, which we say will be uprooted, zo Kesari bas Edom shihoisa metropolin shel Malachim. So, and this refers to, as we said, Kesaria, which was a metropolin. Can anyone translate what a metropolin is?
Metropolis.
Yeah, very good. Shamalachim. This is where all the kings hanged out. Some say that it's where they raised the young kings. Those who say this is where they would coronate. This is where they would establish the kings. Okay. Kesar Yerushalayim, regarding Kesari and Yerushalayim. Im Yormalacha Adam Chorvoshtehen Al Tamein, Yashushtein Al Tamein. If someone says both have been destroyed or both have been settled and are successful, do not believe them. But if one says Charva Kesari v'Yashu Yerushalayim, Charva Yerushalayim v'Yashu Kesari Tamein. If one says that one is destroyed, that Kesari is destroyed and Yerushalayim is prospering, or Yerushalayim is destroyed and Kesari is prospering, that you can believe. Now, why would I think that one can't succeed while the other is succeeding? Shenamar Emleya harcharava, Emleya zu charvazu. If this one is full, the other one is destroyed. Emleya zu charvazu. If this one is full, the other one is desolate. So I'll give you. Rav Nachman says, I'll give you a better pasuk. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar mehacha l'um ye'amatz, which refers to one nation will overpower the other nation. What does this refer to? Where is this from, guys?
Esav?
Very good, very good. So it's with
No,
Yaakov
oh, no, the two
Yaakov
brothers,
and
I'm
Esav.
sorry.
and Esau.
Yeah.
Yaakov and Esau, very good.
Yeah.
So right, so this is when Yitzchak says that when one is prospering, the other one is not, and vice versa as well. So it's a zero-sum game. Yeah. So it's a zero-sum game. But Amar Rav Yitzchak, my desiv yuchan Russia ba'alama tzedek. Amar Yitzchak b'nei Kadosh Baruch Hu, because Yitzchak said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, yuchan Esav, Kadosh Baruch Hu, please grant Esav his reward. Amar la Rashahu. God says, why should I give Esav power? He's a Rasha. Amar lo ba'alama tzedek. Did he not do anything? Did he not learn any righteousness? Amar lo, but in the upright lands, he's twisted things. He's brought about destruction. Amar lo, im kain bal yirageus Hashem. Then he will not be able to see the pride of God. Now, this is a very difficult Gemara to understand. It seems very obscure, so I think there's a number of interpretations, but I'll give you one that I found that's given by Sefer Zos Menuchasi. He says, and this is based, I think, on the Maharsha, Shetainis Yitzchak Haisa She'esav Shogeku. Basically, what's going on is Yitzchak is saying to God, Esav may have done some bad things. He may have murdered, raped, and pillaged, but he has to have some redeeming qualities. Maybe what he did b'shogeg. He didn't realize that he was. I'm not exactly sure what it means. He did b'shogeg. He didn't know any better. The poor kid. It's like you hear these cases. Some 14-year-old kid murders someone. Like, he's just a kid. He didn't know any better. A 14-year-old knows not to murder. God saying since Esav grew up in an upstanding land, meaning Tahainu ben Yitzchak Rivka. What do you mean he didn't know right from wrong? He grew up in the house of Yitzchak and Rivka. There's no better place to know what's right and what's wrong. And he didn't learn from their great deeds. Are you amazed? He has no excuse, he says. Yitzchak has no excuse. But what Yitzchak's final point was, Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Yitzchak says, hey, even if he did a lot of evil, at very least he should get his reward in this world, if not in the world to come, which I know we dealt with a lot in our days when we're learning Shar HaGmul. Okay.
Rabbi, excuse me, it seems like the tangent here, we were talking about going off on tangents. This is just quoting different sayings of Rav Yitzchak. That's how it relates to how we got on the subject, kind of?
Yeah, so we're going to do a lot. Well, it's Rav Yitzchak, but right now it's Rav Yitzchak in terms of Esav and Rome. So we're kind of like Rav Yitzchak, Esav, Rome stuff, but then it's going to be, now we're going to continue on with miscellaneous teachings from Rav Yitzchak that actually have nothing to do with land and nothing to do with Rome. So that's how the tangent's going. It's kind of like an improv game. Give you a word and then you find another word and then you keep going with it. Such is as we know, such is the way Gemara operates sometimes. See, when we did Makus together, it was much more stable. It was a lot of halachic ideas, but in Agadita, your mind just flies everywhere. Okay. Any other questions? All right. All right, Yitzchak, my desiv al titin Hashem ma'avei rasha zamamo al tafek yarumu sela. So what's it mean that Ray Yitzchak says, why is it written that God should not give into the will of the rasha? And mamo, which is a nose ring, that should not be removed, for he shall not be raised up, praised. Amar Yaakov v'nei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we're talking. Now it's not Yitzchak. Now it's Yaakov interceding. Ribono shel olam, al titein le'esav harasha taivas libo. Do not give Esav that which he desires. Zamamo al tafek, and to say not to remove his nose ring, meaning that which is keeping him in line. Don't let him just go and wreak havoc wherever he wishes. Zo gramamya shel Edom. This refers to the gramamya. So Raji says, what's gramamya? Shem Malchus v'hime Edom, just the name of a province in Edom. But I think it's Rav Yaakov Emden who says that it refers to Germany, which is interesting because you know how we say that Germany, we tie into Amalek, and Amalek's from Esav, so it's an interesting tie-in over there. So Gramami shel Edom shel Malay hein yotzim machrim kol kulo. For had God allowed them with no restraints, had God removed all the restraints, removed the nose ring that was holding them in place, then they would have brought havoc upon the entire world. So that's why Yaakov prays, don't let him do that which he wishes, otherwise it'll bring utter destruction to the world. And well, I guess the Roman Empire fell, so I guess his prayers came true. And how did this happen? Why was it that Rome was not successful? And I think historically, it actually this fits historically to a certain degree in terms of the dynamic. There were 100 princes who were wearing crowns back in Gramamya shel Edom. And there were 365 officers, chieftains, whatever you want to call them, Ika that were in Rome as an entirety. Ubechol Yoma, because there were so many, Rome was so huge and there were so many factions. Ubechol Yoma, Napki Hani Api Hani. These guys from one faction would fight the guy from 2 doors down, and then one leader would get killed in the battle, which really, and then that whole province that whole village would have to go into elections and get a search committee together to find a new king. So because they were so busy fighting each other, they weren't able to bring havoc upon the rest of the world. And that's ultimately what led to their downfall. Someone can correct me in history. I mean, my understanding was Rome expanded too much, and then their empire just kind of crumbled before them. Is that about right?
Complicated.
Yep. Okay. All right. All right. Finally, one last Gemara we'll do, and then we'll do a Tosos, and we'll conclude with that. Bamar Rabbi Yitzchak, in Yom Lecha Adam. Now, this is a famous Gemara here. It might actually be my sermon this Shabbos, possibly. I think it fits with the theme I'll talk about, and we'll elaborate on it, God willing, next time. So just basic understanding for now. If someone says when learning Torah, I struggle to understand something, and I put in a lot of work, and I still didn't come out knowing it, don't believe him. Lo yagati mitzasi. Someone says, I didn't put in any yagia, I didn't work for the Torah I learned, umatzasi, and I still succeeded, I still learned a lot, al tamein, don't believe him either. Yagati umatzasi. Someone says, I tried hard and I understood it after putting in a lot of work, then and I found it, then tamein, that's a person you should believe. This echoes a similar language before when we said if someone says Yerushalayim and Kisari could both be successful at the same time, do not believe it. It's similar phraseology. Hani Mili, the Divrei Torah. This is said in regards to learning Torah. But when it comes to business, it's just all in the hands of heaven. If God wants to make you successful, he'll make you successful. And by the way, when it comes to Torah, this only means lichadude, like to sharpen your understanding. When it comes to just remembering the Torah that you learn, that also, it does require effort, but you really just need siyata d'shmaya. Some people just have really good memories, and that's kind of in the hands of heaven. So that's the end of the Gemara we'll be doing. I want to do one little Tosos over here on Vavam and Aleph. Were there any questions on the Gemara before we do Tosos?
I want to say the idea of in the hands of heaven is interesting, because the question is whether it's in the hands of heaven on an immediate basis or whether it's something that was decided like when you were born. Because it would seem like the business example could be either one, and the memory one probably is more of a birth thing. So it's a very interesting idea of when the moment that you have this dependent upon heaven occurs.
Yeah, it's a great point, Andrew. And I think, what you might be alluding to is the Gemara talks about kol bidei shemayim chutz miyira shemayim, that everything's in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven. So, and this gets into the whole question of, in general, there's a tension of two concepts. There's God's providence and there's free will. And so to the degree that there's more direct impact of God's providence in this world, that God is more on top of moving the pieces on the chessboard, that diminishes free will. But the more agency you claim humans have to make consequential decisions in this world minimizes how much hashgacha God has in this world. And so to the degree that that's involved in how God creates us versus what we can get, siyata d'shmaya versus yagia. So God willing, I hope to elaborate on a few approaches to this Gemara next time. So already, Andrew, you're raising a fantastic point for us to consider. So let's take a moment and turn back to Vavam and Aleph, to 6a. You look in Tosos Teratrios. I'm actually curious how they translate Teratrios Ukirkasios. I was translating as theaters and coliseums. Is that how they translate it in the art scroll?
Amphitheaters and circuses.
Circuses, okay. Theaters and circuses. I thought Circassios would be like coliseums, but okay, yeah. So circuses. So what does this refer to? Tosos gives us two interpretations of what this refers to. Actually, not really circuses, interestingly. So Yesh Mefarshim, Bate Avodos Kochavim, that refers to pagan temples of worship. Umechanosam Terach, it's short for something. Lashon Cherpa, which is a lashon of cherpa, of something that is that's humiliation. Kirkasios wrote Salomar Beis Hakise B'lashon Arav, and Kirkasios, not circus, but it means a Beis Hakise, like a bathroom. The issue is with this understanding. What you're saying that a pagan temple and a bathroom we're going to turn into a place where someone teaches Torah, that doesn't really sound like something we want to do. So rather, these pagan temples, we pray that they'll be utterly destroyed speedily in our days. Wrote Saloma, rather, what is Teratrios and Kirkasios refer to? It doesn't refer to the actual church itself, so to speak, to the actual temple, but it refers to their base vad, where they gather. So if I were to give you an example, think of the shul versus the JCC. That's kind of what it means, I guess. Or the sanctuary versus the social hall. So one is where we actually do the religious ceremonies, and one is where we get together for the men's club, which I still haven't figured out what the men's club actually does. It looks pretty cool. They have all these neat little badges and paraphernalia I see whenever I'm there on Thursday mornings. It looks kind of cool. But that's what it's referring to. Not where they get together to actually do the Avodah Zarah, to do the pagan worship, but it's where pagan worshipers get together for for their sisterhood meetings and for their their bingo nights. That's what it refers to according to Tosfos. So a place where they used to play bingo, we could turn into a shul. But interestingly, this comes to a very big halacha l'maisa question. Let me ask you guys: is one allowed to turn a church into a shul? Right, let's say.
I've seen it twice.
Want to buy the church across the street from a good shalom.
Lamaisa, I have two examples where it was permitted under various conditions.
Yeah.
There's a shul. There was a nearby church that was kind of winding down, and they bought the building. There was, I don't know the source of this halacha, but their psak was they had to wait like a year before they could actually go in and start renovating it. I don't know, to get to, they could do it right away. But and then, and I know, and then I know a case in Seattle.
Exercise it fully.
The Rabbi Kletenik there was involved with, where again a breakaway congregation from another shul ended up in what was a church after some time. So I don't know where you're going with the actual halachas, but
in fact, the Young Israel of New Rochelle, before the current building, was a church prior to
there
that.
you go.
Interesting.
And they still had the organ pipes in the shul.
3 cases. All right.
Prohibition is the other way, right? I mean, going from a synagogue to a church. That you don't do.
Well, there's lots of examples of that happening.
So we're
I
actually,
know, but it's not supposed to, right? I mean, isn't that the
You're not supposed
prohibition?
to sold it. Yeah, I think that's actually coming up in this.
yes, exactly. Very good. So this will, we still got some time till we get to it, but you remember, Maseches Megillah doesn't only talk about Purim, but actually we're going to talk about a lot of halachos related to Kriyas HaTorah, as well as to the Beis HaKnesset. So Andrew, you're 100% correct. Andrew's learned Megillah before, so he's here to bring in his expertise with me. Got him on board for that. And yes, we will, God willing, actually talk precisely about that case, Toby, soon. So I wanted to share with you one tshuva, because this is a huge debate based on this post. I'm sorry? Someone say something? You still hear me, right?
That was just noise.
Still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me hear you. Okay, so there's a tshuva on the Shul Meshiv where he was asked regarding a shul that was in New York, and it took me a while. I had to sound out the word multiple times. It's K Resh Ayin Tes Yud Samach Tes Aleph Nun Tes Ayin Nun. Protestant. It's a Protestant. It wasn't the best transliteration I've seen. It's Protestanten. So Protestant. So it was a Protestant church. This is the summary of the tshuva. So the Protestants, they didn't want their building anymore, and they built a bigger, nicer church, and they wanted to sell the building. And he said over there that you would be allowed to turn the Protestant church into a base medrash, into a shul. Why? It's an important halacha in Hilchos Avodah Zarah that if a Jew worships something and worships it as Avodah Zarah, the only solution is to burn it, to destroy it. But a non-Jew, if they used to worship something and they're mevatel, they no longer recognize it as their Avodah Zarah, so then it'd be permissible to use it. And this is actually the svara for why we're not as freaked out about the Greek gods and different things from mythology, because for the most part, people don't really acknowledge it as a religion anymore. They acknowledge it as mythology. So he said, what was particularly good about it being Protestant? We did this in a Monday night shir. They don't worship iconography, I think is the right word. Rather, they just sing. So you know what's funny? It's like the Protestants try to tell the Catholics like we're legit Christians. Meanwhile, like in halacha, we don't care who legit Christians are. But it's funny, like from a halakhic perspective, It's almost like we acknowledge the Catholics as the real Christians and not the Protestants, even though we don't really, it doesn't really give us a nafkamina for us in terms of the politics. So we're just coming from an outside perspective and saying that.
What
but
about
I-
Eastern Orthodox? What about Eastern Orthodox?
Yeah, Eastern Orthodox, I think, are in the same group as Catholic for these purposes. I think originally that's what happened, as the Holy Roman Empire was Catholic,
Catholics,
and
okay.
those who were in the East
Okay.
became the Orthodox Church. So, but they're the most
Yeah.
Eastern Orthodox and Catholics are the most
Right.
traditional amongst the Christians. They're most original. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the interesting point over here. So the Tosos we just saw made it sound like that one is not allowed to turn a pagan temple into a shul. That's why I had to say, oh, this is like the pagan it's the YMCA. Right? That's a good example. We took the YMCA and we turned it into a shul. That's what the Gemara is talking about, not the actual church itself. So rather, we misunderstood Tosos. When Tosos said, what's Tosos saying? Tosos not saying that you're not allowed to turn a base avodah zarah, a pagan temple, into a shul. What he's saying is, why would God make a promise like that? And there's much better places. There's much better places for us. I don't know, take City Hall, or I don't know, take City Field, whatever it might be, and turn that into a Beis HaKnesses or a Beis Medrash. Why do we have to take a Beis Avodah Zarah and turn it into that? It's a question you always have to ask. Are you being Mekadesh L'chol? Are you taking something that's non-Jewish and raising it to something holy? Or by turning a Beis Avodah Zarah to shul, you might be profaning that which is sacred. That's something to think about. But the interesting part about what this Tshuva of the Shalom Nation says is that there's actually fundamentally no isser to take a Beis Avodah Zarah and turn it into a shul. There's an Elia Rabbah that talks about how still one should not do it. It's quoted in the Mishnah Brura. So it would seem, according to many, basic Tosos is that it's usher to turn a Beis Avodah Zarah into a Beis HaKnesses, whereas it seems many would support the notion that it is not usher to do it, it just might be a little distasteful. Okay? So that brings us to the end of what I wanted to.
But then you have like the Meiri's position on yeah. Just one question: when you say Beis Avodah Zarah, there's, for example, the Meiri's opinion on Christianity, right, is that it's maybe not about. The question is it really Avodah Zarah as defined in the original sources or not, right? So
yeah,
it's not so clear. If it was a true Beis Avodah Zarah, then it's more problematic.
Rabbi, wasn't the Beit HaMikdash itself rededicated after it was a pagan temple?
Well, the way you would have to meaning right, but you'd have to it's a good question, Paul. I'm sorry there's a pause because I think I missed Henry, and then okay, let me do Henry and then you, because I had a lag, so I wasn't able to.
No, it's okay. No, I was just mentioning the other level of question here is with Christianity is it classic Avodah Zarah as defined? The Meiri's position is different.
Yeah.
Right?
So okay, let's go in order here. So Henry just raised the point that there's a sheet of the Meiri that Christianity is not Avodah Zarah. Most assume that since it's Trinitarian, we do treat it as Avodah Zarah. The Meiri says it's usher for a Jew to practice Christianity, but their Trinity does not. They're allowed to believe in shutfas. They're allowed to believe that God is partners with others, and that's not a violation of paganism for them. So right, I think that's part of the calculus over here, and he's doing one step further. He's saying, Protestants might not even be as bad as Catholics because they don't have as strict of a Trinitarian interpretation, seemingly.
Right.
I don't know enough about it though. But to Paul, to your point. Oh, just remind me one more time. What was the point that you made? I'm not hearing you.
The pagan temple, or used for pagan purposes.
He makes
Can you hear me now?
Hey,
We can,
yeah,
I
that's
can hear you. The problem's on the rabbi's end.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
I'm really sorry.
Rabbi, should I say it again?
Yeah,
So
please.
my question was, if we can't, I mean, but wasn't the Beit HaMikdash itself rededicated after it was used as a pagan temple?
Very good, very good. So I think what you'd have to answer, I think it's a great question. I think what you have to answer there is that's fundamentally the Beis Hamikdash. Like, let's say, God forbid, Agada Shalom was all of a sudden conquered by our friend. It sounds terrible. Our friends across the street, and then we reclaimed the building soon thereafter. So you wouldn't say it was no longer a shul. You just say it was a shul that was occupied.
Church across.
I'm just messing. I mean, look, we use their parking lot on the high holidays, so they might say, look, you guys owe us one. So for all the high holidays that we use their parking lot, they say they want to use our shul. So my point being is that it's still fundamentally the Beis Hamikdash. It's just that it was occupied temporarily by an outside force. So I wouldn't say it necessarily got a status of a Beis Avodah Zarah in the interim. Does that make sense?
I mean, that raises an interesting question. What if, let's say, God forbid, the church across the street burned down and they needed temporary shelter for a place to hold a service? Would we be allowed to let them use our social hall or something like that?
Yeah, so this gets into
Be
I think
good neighbors?
this gets into the point that Henry raised, which is how strictly do we consider Christianity to be avodah zarah? If this is probably what would happen. What would happen is we would do I'm just saying theoretically a calculus as follows. We would say, but due to two things. Number one, not everyone. There's a minority position that Christianity is not avodah zarah. And there's concerns of darchei shalom, of keeping good relationships with our non-Jewish neighbors, and we would combine both those and say, look, to let them do something in the social hall. Then, if necessary, we can do that because of those two considerations. I'm not giving stock on the spot here, but I'm saying is I could see us easily making a calculus like that. Obviously, I leave this to the executive board to make a decision. Or Rachel, I don't know who makes decisions on these things. God willing, it should never happen.
No. That's a rabbinic decision.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just the poor old assistant
Thank
rabbi.
you.
So. All right, shkoach, everyone. Again, apologies. I'm going to try to figure out what's wrong with it's the internet, not the computer. So I'm going to have to work on the internet. At least we identified the issue. All right, shkoach, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for bearing with me.
Sure. Can I-
Hey, good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Thank
Good Shabbos.
you.
Good job.